Oh, I'm here. A little bit closer. Oh, I gotta smooth this up a little bit. Hey everyone, welcome to a live edition of 3 Beers Deep with your host. Only host. I'm the only guy that's ever done this. It's a very envious position, but I came in to try and fill these shoes. And by fill these shoes, I'm not even wearing shoes. I don't have shoes on. It's nice out. It's 80 degrees in Chicago right now, even though it was kind of cold over the weekend, to the point that at certain points in the night, you could see your breath, and it was like, oh no, fall is here, and oh no, winter is here, and why is Macy's putting out Christmas trees already? But then it's 80, so I guess we're getting kind of an Indian summer, as they call it, where it's a little bit warmer as the fall goes on. But this is my weekly Q&A show, which I normally try to do live in the mornings, and we're trying to slowly adjust a schedule so that I can do more live things consistently so people can tune in and check them out. But just the schedule this summer has been wild, and I'm unable to nail it down. But I think as things calm down, as the weather calms down a little bit, we'll be able to pull that off. But it's a weekly Q&A show in which you submit questions to patrick.tumblr.com or in the Twitch chat for folks that are watching at home right now, or on the bus, or however you're watching this. I'm not sure. I don't know how you watch your videos. But let's get to your questions. Oh, I'm gonna go ahead and mute my video so I don't have to watch myself as I do this. But first question actually is one in the chat from W. Matthew. What do you think of Nintendo's new president? He says precedent, but I'm pretty sure he means president. Yes, Nintendo announced that Satoru Iwata has been replaced, obviously due to his untimely passing earlier this year. Rest in peace, Mr. Iwata. But life goes on, and Nintendo needs to figure out exactly what the path forward is for all sorts of reasons. Satoru Iwata passing comes at a time in which Nintendo was already going to be transitioning in a way that was going to leave some profound marks on the company going forward. We don't really know what the Nintendo NX is. We don't know what Nintendo's plans for the 3DS or a new handheld going forward are. The new 3DS is obviously a stopgap while they sort of align their handheld and console stuff, or if they do some hybrid, or I don't know. It's not even worth speculating about, really, because we don't know what they're going to do quite yet. So we don't know a whole lot about this new president either, but it was just announced early this morning, in which, let's go ahead and pull up see if I can butcher his name. Nintendo new president. But I found, let's see, Tatsumi Kimishima. I feel like that's actually pretty close. I think what's interesting is not just the instituting a new president in Nintendo. It's almost, who wasn't the new president. Miyamoto, Tezuka, neither of them were assigned the role or decided that they didn't want that role. My guess is, and this is based on a little bit of informed speculation that is coming from one of the Japanese articles that came out today, in which they interviewed the new president, and they also had there was some reporting happening. I believe it was in the Nikkei, the Japanese newspaper. In any case, they mentioned that the new president was someone. They wanted someone younger, and so it's not even necessarily this new guy is going to stick around for a long time, in so much as it's possible this is an interim president before the real kind of future pivot of Nintendo, as they look at themselves as a company that's going to be around for a very long time, happens with someone much younger, in the same way that Iwata was brought in to replace Yamauchi, as he was on his way out and it was extremely old. They want to make sure the company is young and fresh and agile. And maybe there's already plans in place for the next 5 years of the company in which this new guy can come in and just sort of execute on that, but that they need to start training people, getting someone ready to be the future visionary of a company, when Nintendo has to start thinking, like, what is the world post-Iwata, post-Miyamoto, post a lot of their senior people that have come to define who Nintendo is for the last couple of decades. They've done it once before. Can they do it again? I think Miyamoto is a slightly different scenario than Iwata, not to take away anything from what he did. But one of the tidbits in the interview, which didn't come out of the interview but was part of the reporting in the newspaper article, was that the new president, he was down apparently on the Wii U. He was not necessarily super excited about that, thought it was too similar to the Wii, didn't think it was, I don't know if I'd use the word innovative, but he just didn't think it was what Nintendo needed to put out. It was not the console that Nintendo should be putting out at that time. And so that's kind of an interesting wrinkle to, if that is true, if we take that as a fact of the situation. The idea that the president of Nintendo was someone who didn't think the Wii U was the greatest idea in the world makes for a fascinating wrinkle as we head towards the NX and whatever comes with that or doesn't come with that, as the case may be. Let's see. What else we got here in the Twitch chat? Arcadia Exeter, 47 beers deep just sounds like a problem. Dude, maybe I should just start doubling the beers every single time. Part of what I enjoy about doing this show is that folks tune in and they'll go, do you really drink 3 beers every time you do this? And I'm terrified at the prospect that people think I am actually having 3 beers every time that I do this show. I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't be a great idea, but it is more just I thought it was kind of funny. John Doe, JBG. Patrick, I sent in that message a while ago about extreme haunts. Halloween is coming up. Any plans to take the plunge? I believe he is alluding to the fact that my wife and I enjoy going to haunted houses, but one of the things we have kind of always drawn the line on, or more accurately, just have never quite taken the plunge on, is this idea of extreme haunted houses. So these are haunted houses in which you have to sign a contract or a waiver when you go, because they are allowed to touch you. They are allowed to interact with you. So usually when you do a haunted house, sort of the rule is that you're not supposed to touch the actors. The actors are not going to touch you. But when you go to these extreme haunted houses, that is actually flipped around. You are signing waivers that say, hey, we're allowed to touch you. We're allowed to screw with you. And some of the ones that I have read about, there was one that was in New York that came to Chicago, and my wife and I kept thinking about doing it and then just backed away because we couldn't quite. Well, what happened was I read about them. So they changed it each time, so it wasn't going to be a spoiler, but I wanted to get a sense of when they say they're going to touch you, what does this mean? And one of them, some of the stories that people were writing about, I think it was like a thread on Reddit, was that they walked in, the door was slammed shut, they were all by themselves, they were strapped to a table, a bag was put over their head, and then a chainsaw was waved around very close to their face. Now granted, I'm sure that chainsaw didn't have the actual whatchamacallit all the way around it, so it was not dangerous, but that's still terrifying. There was another instance in which a woman came up to them wearing a plastic bag and then proceeded to grab them by the face and make out with them. So you're being made out with through the plastic bag, but that still probably counts as making out with this other human being. There was another instance in which like people were, it's just stuff like that. You know, I'm not going to keep going down this path because it's kind of weirding me out. But I feel like I want something in between. I want something that goes beyond a normal haunted house in which you know it's just sort of goofy and there's someone at the door. You have to hold that thought. I'll be right back. Whew. Sorry. There's a grocery delivery that I had to go take care of, and they were supposed to come an hour ago, but they didn't. Anyway, what I'm saying is I want something in between where you have a haunted house that is people not really getting up in your face, and a haunted house where people are getting up in your face. But I don't know if I necessarily need someone making out with me when all that happens. So, as I catch my breath from coming up 3 flights of stairs. Anyway, let's see what else we got going on in the Twitch chat. The Christopher Robin. Patrick, what do you think of the Apple TV stuff for video games? Harmonix exclusives and all that jazz. The tech media certainly hyped up the prospect of the Apple TV and the idea of the Apple TV being this big boom for video games, and Nintendo's about to be challenged by Apple, and Microsoft and Sony should be scared of what Apple's doing. And what we ended up getting out of the Apple TV announcement, which is so there's a couple of things. One, I think it was overplayed in the media in terms of what we actually should have expected. I think there was some feeling going in that, wow, like could Nintendo just walk out on stage and their partnership, doing mobile games is going to, lead to them being on stage with Tim Cook, Apple CEO, and being like Nintendo and Apple are working together and blah, 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 blah. And that was, on the extreme end of what might be possible with an Apple TV. And what we actually got is right in line with what Apple has always done in the past. I think people tend to look at Apple as an extremely secretive company that doesn't really show people what they're doing, but you can look at their history with a lot of stuff and actually find that Apple is remarkably consistent. And with video games, Apple has been remarkably consistent in that they just don't care about video games that much. That doesn't mean they don't care about video games, but in terms of their corporate values, in terms of the mediums that mean something to Apple, movies and music take precedent over anything else. If you look at any of their presentations, the things they choose to talk about, their Apple Music initiative, music and movies are the passions driving that company. That was started with Steve Jobs and it's continued with Tim Cook, either as a legacy or because that continues to be the foundation of the company. That said, they have also greatly profited from video games, the proliferation of video games on the iPhone and the iPad. The Mac is never going to be a serious gaming machine, even if it gets to be a better situation as it is now than it was previously for people who own Macs that are capable of playing games. It's certainly better, but it's never going to be like the PC. It's just never going to change in that way. But with the video games and the Apple TV, it's the exact same approach as with the iPhone and iPad, in which they are going to support games, which means there are going to be lots of games for the Apple TV. I expect some of them can be greatly successful. I imagine most of them are going to just be adaptations of what's already available on the iPhone and iPad. You'll get some unique things like harmonics. You'll get some unique things like the Crossy Road multiplayer. But by and large, the Apple TV is just another place to port things from previous iOS platforms. Now, granted, I think you're going to see some developers experiment with the accelerometer that allows them to do things that just wouldn't be possible without the remote that you have. That you just can't do it with just a phone or just an iPad. You would need two screens, a giant screen and a controller. But I don't expect that Apple is ever going to take gaming seriously in the way that sometimes seems to happen cyclically every single year, is this idea that, oh, this is the year that Apple really gets into games. Like, no. I think they're taking some important steps in terms of the App Store, in which they make it easier to navigate. They're trying to make it easier to find things. They need to try and, if not solve, at least get better at discoverability. But Apple has never, ever, I think, never ever is, those are really hyperbolic. That's going to look bad if this ever changes. But Nintendo doesn't need, or Apple doesn't need to take video games seriously, because video games already take Apple seriously. They don't need to take, you constantly hear about Apple is negotiating content deals with music producers and movie studios. It's because the relationship is different there, in which music and movies are things that Apple needs to go after in order to acquire that for their platforms. Whereas with video games, that already exists and they want to come to Apple. Apple doesn't need to go out and sign things. Doesn't mean that they couldn't. There have been rumors that Apple is going to get into trying to fund content that it's original for Apple TV, and I guess all their iOS devices in terms of television and movies. So I guess it's not a complete leap from there to think that they might do something like video games, if not in-house, then to sign contracts with studios. But they seem very content right now not being a gaming powerhouse, but being a home to a lot of video games because they have a giant user base. Does that mean they're getting the best games? No. But because gaming is not a medium that they prioritize, they don't really care. And so that's kind of the status quo, and I expect it to stay that way going forward. TW Rage 96, howdy Patrick and chat. Hey man. Let me know in the chat. I got a question for all of you. How are people feeling about Destiny and the Taken King? I'm going to be spending all my nights this week playing Soma. I'm starting it this week so I can review it for Kotaku early next week. So unfortunately, even though I've downloaded the update for Destiny, I am not going to end up spending any time with Destiny. Or I shouldn't say any time, but I suspect that I'm not going to dedicate the time I would like to, also given that I am still only, 10 hours into Metal Gear, so I have plenty more to go there. But I'm curious how people are feeling about Destiny. If you're excited for the updates that are coming, is this your first time getting into Destiny 2.0 as it's being called? Curious how you guys feel about that, so kind of talk that out in the Twitch chat while we move on to the next question. Some folks have been asking in the chat about Krampus. It's a trailer for a new horror film that's coming out from Michael Dougherty? I've never had to pronounce his name out loud before, so I'm actually not 100% sure I say his name. Anyway, he's the director of Trick or Treat, which is one of the best horror films of the last 10 years, an anthology in which it follows 3 or 4 different stories. I kind of forget exactly which, and they all kind of converge or intersect in interesting ways. It's super funny, and it's scary, and it's great, and you should check out Trick or Treat if you haven't, because you are missing out on, again, one of the best horror films, not even just anthologies, just one of the best horror films of the last 10 years. And his new one is called Krampus, in which it is sort of a nightmarish take on Santa Claus. There's a trailer out that I highly recommend taking a look at. It looks, again, like a great combination of really funny, really scary, heart, characters. It's all you want from a horror film, and I cannot wait to be watching that this holiday season. My wife and I are very, very excited for that already. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of the questions I had already picked out over here. Kevin Clearly, thanks for everything you've done over the years. Well, thank you very much, Kevin Clearly. It's very kind of you to say. Find it interesting that you have this perception of Dota 2 being such a hard game to penetrate when you've experienced other games in the past which have similar reputations, such as the Souls games, Spelunky, and maybe even Fire Emblem. I've always found it interesting how a game's reputation becomes such a powerful force which can deter people from playing it. Which game that you played did you have the most resistance to? I apologize if you were hearing a beeping in the background. There's a guy that does that once a day trying to sell food that no one wants. I've never seen anyone buy it, and yet every day he goes by and he honks his horn, and I wish he wouldn't, because it takes like 10 minutes for him to go from block to block. Anyway, you make a good point that you could probably examine how I've talked about the Souls games in the past and apply that directly to how I talk about MOBAs, if we kind of just get away from Dota and just talk about MOBAs more generally, in which you have a type of video game that is extremely difficult to get into at first, and yet can be extremely satisfying once you've kind of gotten over that initial learning curve. And I think I try and temper, one of the things I've learned over the last couple of years when I've taken experiments with strategy games or like Fire Emblem, or hardcore roguelikes like Spelunky, or hardcore action games like the Souls games, is that when you break down that barrier, when you try and reconcile your preconceived notion of a game or the narrative surrounding a game, and reconcile that with the reality of what it is to actually play that game, it can radically change how you end up feeling about it. And I feel like a MOBA would be that for me. I've talked about in previous editions of this show that I look at Heroes of the Storm as my entryway into the MOBAverse. I don't have the time to do it right now. It's not something I can commit to explicitly up front, but I think you're right that it can be very easy to be dismissive of genres, of franchises, of games that you very well may just not understand, and that instead of actually having anything to say about them, you're just kind of parroting what other people are already saying. So it's not that Dota 2 isn't really challenging or difficult to get into. Those things can be true, but are they actually true for you? That's the part that I think people kind of get hung up on, rather than just saying, I don't have time for Dota 2. You kind of get into this kind of loop of just saying, well, it's just not for me. Maybe it is for you. Maybe, I feel like I hear that time and time again from folks that get into those types of games. They end up going, actually, these are fantastic. I really enjoy them. Even if they only get into it long enough to kind of understand and have it click, which is really the hump I want to get over, is just to say, this is why I don't like this game, or this is why I do like this game. I just want to be able to be articulate about it, and that is not currently what I can do. Thwack, what type of food does that guy sell? I'm not sure. I've never gone down and look. It's probably the Hispanic neighborhood, and I think he's Hispanic, so he's probably selling like why am I blanking on the food that he'd be selling? Oh, it's like corn wrap things. Someone is going to get in chat. Someone's going to get in chat. Thanks for letting me know, person in chat that has not said it yet, but says it in just a moment. Mr. Vojan says, hey, Patrick, I'm not good with horror movies. I suffer weeks of messed up sleep schedules after watching one, but I enjoy watching that stuff. The games I see you playing, the things I hear you talk about all sound great. Any ticks? Senior Tacos, very funny that you are the one that got this right. Tamales. He sells tamales. You know what, Mr. Vojan, you are someone that I have heard from a number of times in the past, folks that say they are curious about horror games, they are curious about horror movies, and yet they have trouble getting into them because they're kind of overwhelming, they're too much, they can disrupt their sleep schedule, it gets in their head, and they can't quite get it out. And the recommendations I have given to people in the past has been there's a couple of things. One, watch it with the lights on. No big deal. That's not a problem. Don't feel bad about it. The other thing you can do is you can watch it with another person. I find that having people in the room. The Dark One asks, "Is the sun setting on you?" It is. I think it would get lighter if I did this. Look. Oh. The sun was in my face when we started, and then now it's gone. But anyway, so watch those films with other people. When you have people around you, when you can look over and see someone, you can touch someone, you can laugh with someone, it breaks the tension and doesn't allow the film or game to get in your head in the same way that it would otherwise. And horror films and games especially really lend themselves to crowd play because they're enjoyable in a way that not every other game is to the people that are watching. Not all games are interesting to watch. I mean, obviously, that idea has changed a little bit in the last couple of years with the rise of streaming and YouTube and Let's Plays and all those things. But I think as players, I think we would all agree, that there are games we prefer to play rather than to watch. And I think horror stuff in general works in a lot of different ways in which they're also fun to play and also fun to watch. So, if you're the type of person that looks at horror and goes like, gosh, I don't think it's for me because I think it can be a little too much, those are some tricks that you can use in order to avoid that. I've also found with some folks that if I tell them, just spoil it for you. Why don't you look up what happens in the film? If you look it up, then maybe you'll be able to reduce some of the tension for yourself and make it a more enjoyable experience. But then it's also possible the genre is just not for you. But I get so much enjoyment out of it that I always try and come up with these ways that the folks can maybe enjoy it in a way they didn't think of before. And now it runs counter to this idea that you've got to be a man and you got to watch horror with the lights out and whatever. If this allows you to enjoy something you wouldn't have enjoyed any other way, do whatever you need to do to make that happen. I think that is far more important than sort of playing into whatever idea of how you're supposed to do it. That's kind of something I push back in a lot of things. I push back on it in terms of this is how you're supposed to play Dark Souls. Like people got really angry when I played Demon Souls and I played as a magic character. Like, who cares? Doesn't bother me that I'm kind of cheesing my way through the game. Play the way you want to enjoy it, or is going to allow you to enjoy it. If that means cheating, if that means doing things in an unorthodox fashion, I think that is totally, totally fine. I thought someone had broken into my apartment. Instead, it was my wife just coming home. Jen Hartnett says, "Hi, Patrick. Hello. Thanks for joining in just as I creepily looked away from the screen, thinking that things were going horribly wrong in my apartment." Arcadia Exeter, oh no, it's the tamale man. He heard me talking shit. He was watching my stream, and he knew that I did not want what he was selling. He knew that I was telling the internet, nobody wants your tamales, and he went and found me. I gotta keep an eye out for that guy. All right, let's do one more question as we bring this to a close. Well, this is a quick one. Aniolas, hi Patrick, this is your yearly reminder to play Nier. Dude or dudette. Started Persona 4, haven't gotten back to it. Started Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, have to put it on pause while I play Soma. Mad Max, played 90 minutes of it, put it down, want to play more of it. Danganronpa for Vita, haven't touched it yet. Destiny the Taken King, coming out tonight, not going to have time for it. Super Mario Maker, showed up on Friday, haven't touched it yet. I mean, it's bad, guys. I mean, it's great. There are so many diverse and interesting video games out right now. what an exciting time to be playing and enjoying video games. What a terrible time for my free time when it is combined with things like the summer and going away for weekends in which I cannot dedicate the time to enjoy all these things. But that is just the greatest complaint to have, which is just there's too much great stuff. So, Let's see. I'm trying to see which one we should end on as I look through here. Hassoon says, this is so don't let people tell you what to play, Patrick. Don't let the zeitgeist control your life. Just play what you want to play. So I guess we'll close on that because that's kind of an interesting question that kind of like directly intersects with my job and the things that I talk about in my professional life. So I kind of have a professional obligation to stay current. So the zeitgeist is a little bit of my wheelhouse because what I'm talking about, whether it's on podcasts or articles I'm writing, are often tapping into the conversation that's happening amongst game players. And so what's happening there is a result of what they're playing. What they're playing are the things that are out now. And so in order to capitalize that, in order for me to make sure that I'm doing my job the best that I can do, that usually means that I then need to ensure I am playing those games. And so, yes, I'm not playing everything. I am very cautious about overcommitting my professional life in that it will completely disrupt my personal life. Obviously, they kind of overlap in a lot of ways. Doing stuff like this is after I finished work, and then I'm doing this because I love talking to you guys. I love answering questions. I love having a conversation with my audience. But I try and put limits on that stuff. I try and make sure that as much as I want to do everything, I can't do everything, and I need to make sure I'm spending time with friends and family and my wife and my dog, and make sure you're trying to balance as much of that stuff out with my love of video games. But it is kind of unique what I do because I do have to be current in some ways, or at least aware, right? I don't need to play 80 hours of Metal Gear, but the 10 hours allows me to watch a news story and be informed about whatever I need to relay to an audience without sounding like I'm just parroting whatever the company is releasing out to the public. The Christopher Robin, shouldn't it be balanced out by the amount of people at Kotaku? Let some other people take AAA and ask them about it. That's definitely true, and we do split that stuff up. Like, that's why I'm not worried about Destiny. But I like being current. I like playing the stuff that everyone is talking about, and especially if it's stuff that I think might be outside my wheelhouse, right? Like, so Destiny was a game that I played last fall, did not care for it all, played through the story, just went and kind of moved on. But the way people talk about that game, the passion they have for it, I want to know what that is. I want to be part of that. I think that would be enjoyable and exciting to learn more about why Destiny is the way it is, why it drives such passion from people. And I don't understand that yet because I didn't give it the time necessary in order to do that. And I feel like I'm missing out on something. And it's not the fear of missing out because, I want to be a part of everything. It's more along the lines of wanting to understand what makes games click for other people, because I think that broadens my understanding of why games are interesting, especially if it aligns with something that I have either written off or thought isn't for me, which kind of intersects with what we were talking about earlier in terms of giving games like Dota 2 a chance, even if you look at them and go, oh, they're not for me. I think that all kind of, it's part of my general purpose, my general mission to make sure I'm always playing different things. And the moment that I tell myself this isn't for me, that is exactly the moment that I want to give it a shot, give it a further shot, because maybe I missed something the first time. Now, there are still going to be things you just don't like, but, maybe you didn't turn over the right stone. Maybe you didn't find the thing that allows it to click for you. But we'll have to leave a further conversation on that for another time. That has been 3 beers deep for September 14th, not June 10th or whatever it said when I put up that image because I put up the wrong one. But thanks so much for everyone for tuning in. It seems like we had more people that were able to join in the evening, so maybe we'll alternate between doing this morning and evening. We'll kind of see. Let me know what you think. You can send questions in the future to patrickklepek.tumblr.com, or you can ask them here live on the Twitch chat. You can get the audio version at Inventory Management on iTunes, which is kind of my catch-all feed for various audio-related things, although it's mostly been 3 beers deep these days. And if you like me talking about video games, you can go to youtube.com/PatrickKlepek, see me play lots of different games, and you can also go to Match 3 on iTunes, in which me Gita Jackson and Sam Phillips, 2 other Chicago people, real smart folks that come from different backgrounds than me. You can check it out, talking about games every single week. We've really enjoyed the community we're building with Match 3 and hope to do a live show in Chicago sometime in the near future. But like I said, that's going to do it. Everyone enjoy your evening. I'm off to play some Soma after I eat some dinner. That's terrible. That's an awful joke. I need to